Hi guys, Juliana here. Welcome to this week's Words of Life message. It is another Thursday here. Happy Thursday to you all. I am excited to share with you what God has been sharing with me this week. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about feeding on God's faithfulness and what that means for us, why it's so important, and how sometimes actually looking into the past, sometimes we hear it's not good to look into the past, but sometimes it is good to look into the past because we remember what God has done for us in the past. So thank you guys for joining me today, and I hope you guys are well. The verse tonight I want to share with you is from Psalm 37, and it is verse 3. It says, trust, lean on, rely on, and be confident in the Lord, and do good. So shall you dwell in the land, and feed surely on his faithfulness. And truly you shall be fed. And I was really ministered to by this verse this week, because it doesn't say you might be fed. It doesn't say you might be satisfied. It says surely you will be satisfied. Surely you will be fed. And so this week I have been having to remind myself, leading into kind of the next steps of where we're headed and what direction we're going in, what God has done for us in the past. And God has been faithful in the past. Therefore, he never changes. He will be faithful in the now as well as in the future. So we are told as believers to remember the times in the past where God has come through for you. So I just wanted to share some examples with you guys about when God has been faithful in the past for me. And I remember being single and having just finished university. I went to Wilfrid Laurier University, and I had graduated with a degree in communication studies and sociology. And I came out of university still unsure of where I was headed, of what I was doing in life. And I went to work for the government for a few weeks, and I just knew this is just not for me. And so I left not knowing exactly where I was going to get a job next and what I was going to do next. And I started volunteering for a pregnancy center, crisis pregnancy center in the area that I used to live in. And at that time, it wasn't a paid position. And shortly after I joined, it became a paid position. And I started to look for a place to live outside of my parents' home. I had been blessed to be able to live with them until I was done university and was able to save a lot of money that way to commute to school. But I knew it was time to move on, and God was telling me, I have a place for you and it's time to look. And so always in my journey with him, he has always showed me, ask me the price of what you should be looking for. So I was praying to the Lord and asking him, what kind of place should I be looking for, and what price should I be looking for? And the Lord told me to look for a place to rent for $250. Now, the place that I was looking in, I would look at beautiful places and some not so beautiful places, and everything was $750 and upwards, and $1,500, and it was just discouraging. I would come back home just feeling like, God, did you really tell me like I'm to leave home? Because this is just $250. Did I hear you right? I can't believe that this will even happen. So eventually I had to let go of moving out and just release it into God's hands and know, God, you have told me I'm to move, and you have told me a price of $250. So instead of stressing out about it, and instead of trying to figure it out and make it happen, I can't do it. So I'm going to have to trust you that you have the perfect place for me for $250 per month. And lo and behold, I was reading the newspaper, and there was an ad looking for a postgraduate person to live in the home of a woman who was a quadriplegic and who needed help around the house, just light grocery shopping, light cleaning, but basically someone to be in the home. And so anyone interested could phone this number. And so I met with this family, and a wonderful woman who's turned out to be one of my best friends and a dear, dear friend of mine. But anyways, we were talking around the table, and it came up to the rent, and I just thought, here we go. Like, everything seems just amazing about this place. I would love to do this. And it was in friends, it was like in a brand new home in a very safe, as a single woman, I wanted a safe neighborhood. It was in a brand new home, and the whole basement basically of the house would have been mine. So no longer was I looking at just like the small, pincy little room in a place that was a sketchy neighborhood. That's what I thought I was going to have to live in. And it turns out they got to the price, and they said, we've been thinking about rent, and we're thinking that you would have to pay $250, and everything would be included in that. And friends, my jaw just about hit the floor. I could not believe it. And this is what I mean. What God did there, I lived there for just about 2 years, and I remember that time frequently as I look forward to bigger and bigger things that God is leading me into, and bigger things that God is leading my family into, as markers to feed myself, to nourish myself on, look at what God has done for me in the past. Look at what he's going to do for me now, here, and now into the future as well, too. And it turned out to be an amazing experience and an amazing marker in my life of look at what God has done. I think of another example of just meeting my husband, Mike. My husband, Mike, and I, we didn't know each other. We went to this convention in Urbana, Illinois in 2003. And we met each other unplanned in a stadium filled with 22,000 other students from all over the world. And he sat down beside me, and we got to talking, and I thought, wow, like he's just an amazing man. I want to get to know him. And we exchanged email addresses and wanted to keep in touch. And then we came again together another night and met in this huge auditorium again 22,000 students meeting together in this stadium. And it was a different section that I went to sit in this time. And lo and behold, there was Mike again, unplanned. And that happened 2 more times within my time at Urbana. And I knew right away there's something special about this, that there is nothing coincidental about the Lord. And when he does something, nothing is coincidence. So we kept in touch for about a year, emailing, and then God told me, it's time to let it go, Juliana. You need to let him go. And I had a really hard time with that. But I knew that my hands were all over that relationship. I wanted it to happen, and I felt like I was pushing hard for it to happen. And Mike just wasn't in a place yet where he felt that he was ready to pursue a serious relationship. So we went our separate ways for a year, and then God brought him back. A year later, lo and behold, he emailed me and wanted to pursue a relationship together. And it was everything that my heart wanted, but it was all in God's timing, and it was all in God doing it. And a third example I want to share with you is when I was pregnant with our twin boys, Joshua and Caleb. I was told by numerous doctors that the boys were going to come prematurely. And if they were going to come prematurely, we were going to lose them. Then we were told one of the twins was at risk of having Down syndrome. And it was week after week we were in going to these ultrasounds to make sure everything was okay. And week after week, we would come back with devastating news and wondering what's going to happen with these boys. And we would pray into the situation leading into every single appointment. We would pray all the way home, knowing, God, you are able to do that which the doctors don't think is going to amount to a healthy pregnancy. You are able to bring two healthy boys into this world, and we believe you to do this. You are capable of doing this. But it was a very stretching period, and I had to feed on God's faithfulness before, to remember, God, remember what you did for me before when I was looking for a place to rent and I couldn't find anything, and you told me to look for a place for $250, and that seemed impossible. And I remember your faithfulness when I met Mike, and it was just unbelievable how you drew us together, and you did that. I'm believing for you to do this for my boys. And God did it. God absolutely did it. Our two healthy boys were born with no problems. And so I want to just share with you guys, if you're new to these video messages, I love to journal. And I keep all of my journals. They bring encouragement to me in whatever I'm facing today and whatever I'm heading into. It is life-giving and goes on giving life because they're God's words to me. It's how he speaks to me. And I just love it. So I had seen in my journal this week from 2017 where God said, I love you, sweet girl, and I'm so proud of you for taking these risks with me. Do you know that God is proud of you when you take risks with him, when you step out and believe him for what he says he can do for you, that he is so proud of you, and that he is so proud of you for walking in courage and walking in boldness. And God went on to say, I know some may look and think you are foolish and unwise, but you keep looking to me. Friends, there have been many people in my life who have told me, $250? $250? And are you sure about Mike? Like, really? Like, you guys live so far away. He was in the States. I was in Canada. How was that going to work? What was our life going to look like? I know that we decided to have kids very close in age, and many times we would go out and I would have complete strangers telling me, you guys are going to be really busy. What were you thinking? Like, why would you have them so close in age? And so God just reiterates to me over and over in my life. It's not the first time that he's told me this in my journal, that I may look foolish and I may look unwise, but to keep looking to him. And God told me, remember all the stories in the Bible where people were called to do out of the box things and how they were misunderstood. And yet, he said, I was faithful. God said to me, I don't always make sense, and I certainly don't have limits. So I think of, in this moment, as I'm sharing this with you, with Noah in the Bible, who was told it's going to rain, not just a little bit of rain, it's going to flood. I'm going to flood the earth, and I want you to build this boat. These people had never seen rain before. Noah had never even seen a boat before. And he was told to build a boat. God had to teach him as he went. This is how it's going to be built. This is what you will need to actually finish the boat. And this is what's going to happen. But all throughout the building process, he was ridiculed. He was mocked. He was teased. People thought he was crazy. If you look at Abraham, God told him, you were going to be the father of many nations. But he had a wife, Sarah. They were well on in their years, and Sarah was unable to have children, and she was well past her childbearing years. And yet God brought along Isaac, and many from that line from Isaac. Noah, God was faithful. He brought a flood, and he saved Noah and his family. And so throughout my life, I look to those times where God was faithful in the past, not only in my own life, but in the Bible as well, to remind myself that God, you have been faithful in the past. You don't change. If people were misunderstood in the Bible before, that means I may be misunderstood now. I may be looking like I'm crazy. I may look unwise. But when I look to you, you are the one who tells me who I am, and you are the one who gives me direction. You are the one who works completely outside of the box. God, in this journal entry, he said, you are safe with me. All of you, Juliana, your spirit is safe with me. Your soul is safe with me. Your mind, your will, your emotions, and your body is safe with me. All that you are is safe and secure with me. God went on to say, remember, I did not ask you to come up with a plan of how to get from this place of lack or of having very little to the place of abundance that I have for you. He said, I will get you there. I know what I'm doing. God told me in this time in 2017, he continues to tell it to me today, don't be afraid of the new things I bring your way. To have a new way means that you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. But God said, let my love drive out all the fear that wants to rise up within you. So why is it so important? In Psalm 37, verse 3, it tells us to be confident in the Lord, to trust on him, to rely on him, and be confident in the Lord and do good. And it says, so shall you dwell in the land and feed surely on his faithfulness, and truly you shall be fed. And I love that promise, that it's not maybe you'll be fed, maybe he'll come through for you. You absolutely will be fed. God is a God who keeps his promises. And time again, God proves that to me over and over again. He is a God who is faithful to his word. When he says he's going to do something, he always does it. It's us that sometimes has expectations on when he's going to do it, on how he's going to do it. But why is it important to feed on his faithfulness? Friends, it's so important because we have an enemy who masquerades himself as an angel of light, Satan, who is very subtle, but he is prowling around like a lion looking for someone to devour. And he is all about killing, stealing, and destroying. He doesn't want you to have peace in your life. He doesn't want you to have direction. He certainly doesn't want you to feed on God's faithfulness, because when you feed on God's faithfulness, it strengthens you. It strengthens you. And he doesn't want to see you walking in intimacy and strength. Why else should we feed on God's faithfulness? We need to feed on his faithfulness because we tend to forget his character. We can look in the Bible at the Israelites and remind ourselves that tends to be us too. They were treated horribly in Egypt, crying out for God to rescue them. And God sent Moses to lead them out and into the promised land. And they were so eager to get out of there. They were treated horrendously. And immediately when stuff started to get difficult as they were coming out of Egypt, as God had split the Red Sea for them to come out, they were headed into the promised land. Here they were waiting for God to continue to lead them into this promised land, and it took longer, but they made it take longer because of their grumbling and their complaining. But they frequently forgot about who God was and about what life was like in Egypt. And they frequently forgot how they were treated, and God had to remind them, do you remember what it was really like from Egypt? Do you really want to go back to that? Remember how I treat you. Remember how I take such good care of you. But they would frequently forget. And friends, sometimes we can forget the character of God, who he is, and who we are to him. You, friends, are of great value to him, and he loves you with an everlasting love. And he delights in taking care of you. You are not a burden to him. You are not too much to him, ever, ever. He delights in taking good care of you. But we, like the Israelites, can forget who he is. And so that's why it's so important to feed ourselves on the faithfulness of God in the past. And we live in a time where we are at war. We are at war. Though we are believers, we fight from a place of victory against the enemy and against his schemes and his lies. But this is never paradise that God designed for us. Living life right now is not the paradise the way God intended us to live. And so it causes us to need to depend on the Lord that much more to have the strength to walk in this life and to live this life in Him. So feeding on His faithfulness, when we feed ourselves, when we eat food, food is for nourishing us. It gives us energy for what's ahead. It's vital for our survival. It actually, food and the sugar in food, the vitamins and nutrients, it all helps us even to have the correct mindset for our brains to function properly. It satisfies us. And so when we remember God's faithfulness in the past, let His faithfulness, let the markers of how God has taken care of you in the past, of how He has ministered to you, of how He has blessed you in the past, of how He has spoken to you in the past, be markers for how you move forward with Him. Let it energize you, let it strengthen you, let it uphold you, let it give you nourishment, and let it satisfy you, because when you choose to feed yourself on the faithfulness of God, on who He is, on His character, on the God that never changes, you will find that you will be fed and you will be nourished in your innermost being, and that will help you to engage in whatever circumstances you find yourselves in, because we all find in our lives we have troubles, we have trials, we have frustrations, we have problems, but in it all, God says, I will be everything to you. I am sufficient for you. And God is a loving, wonderful, wonderful God who is all about meeting every need for us. I'm just going to finish off with just a quick verse from Romans 15, verse 13. And this is God's question, I believe, for you tonight. He asks, may the God of your hope so fill you with all joy and all peace in believing, through the experience of your faith, that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound and be bubbling over and overflowing with hope. So God wants to fill you up so much as you feed on His faithfulness with hope, that you will, with joy and peace, believe that by the faith that God has given to you, that you can experience so much more of what He has for you, and you may be overflowing with hope, because God is a good God, and He desires to bless you with hope, with joy, with peace, no matter the circumstance that you find yourself in. You can find everything that you need in Jesus Christ. So friends, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday evening, and I will see you again next week. If you haven't already, you feel free to sign up for my newsletters on www.julianacashin.com. It's Juliana spelt with one N. On my website, I have all of these videos posted too, and any ones that are already past, you can go back and watch them. I also have written blog posts written there for you to read. They're called A New Way, and I try and get those out every month. And I have a new one coming up that I'm really excited to share with you. And with every blog post, if you sign up for my newsletter, you get those new blog posts right to your inbox, and as well, you get a newsletter with freebies and resources and kind of more personal stuff that I'm going through that I share with you. It's just short, but if you haven't already, I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter. They come out every month, and I've got a really exciting one that I'm working on, and I can't wait to share with you. We're going to be talking a little bit in my blog post about God's timing and how timing is everything. And in my newsletter, I'm talking about sitting in his presence, and a lesson that God taught me through my daughter Naomi. And we can learn so much through our kids, through our circumstances. God is always teaching us about who he is and about who we are to him. And you are loved by the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he takes great delight in taking care of you. He takes great delight in providing for you and providing for you well. And he takes great delight in strengthening you and reminding you all the time of who you are to him. So friends, thank you for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Okay, bye.